The first thing that felt wrong wasn't the knock itself, but the way it sounded. Calm, slow, almost intentional. It was a little after 10 at night, and I had just finished turning off the lights, ready to let the quiet take over. Then came 3 knocks. Not urgent, not random, just measured, like whoever was outside already knew I would answer. When I opened the door, it was my neighbor. I recognized her immediately, even though we had barely spoken before. Something about her presence felt different. Not dramatic, not obvious, just focused, like she wasn't there by accident. She apologized for the late hour and told me her sink was acting up. She asked if I could take a quick look. I said yes. The moment I stepped into her apartment, that feeling came back. Stronger this time. Everything was too clean, too organized. I walked into the kitchen and checked the sink. It worked perfectly. Water ran smoothly, drained without any issue. When I stood up and told her everything looked fine, she didn't react the way I expected. She just looked at me. That should have been my cue to leave. Instead, I stayed. She suggested I sit for a minute, just in case the problem came back. At first, the conversation was normal, but slowly, the tone shifted. Her questions became more personal, more specific. She asked if I slept well, if I had trouble at night. I laughed it off, but then she mentioned something harder to ignore. She said she could hear me walking around upstairs late at night. That made sense. Old building, thin floors. But then she said I would stop sometimes, like I was listening for something. That part didn't feel like a guess. She said I sometimes talked in my sleep, that I repeated the same word over and over. When I asked her what word, she said it without hesitation. And the moment I heard it, everything inside me went quiet. Because it wasn't just any word. It was something personal, something I had never shared with anyone. It was tied to my father. No one should have known it, not even by accident. That was the moment I realized this wasn't normal anymore. I stood up, ready to leave. But before I could reach the door, she said something else that stopped me completely. She asked if I had gone into my father's study yet. The question hit harder than anything else. No one knew I had avoided that room. After he died, I locked it and never went back in. Hearing her mention it felt like she had reached into something I had kept hidden on purpose. When I asked her how she knew that, she didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to a small table. She opened a drawer and pulled out a key. It looked old, worn from years of use. She held it out to me. She said it was supposed to be mine. Nothing about that moment made sense, but everything felt too specific to ignore. Then she told me something I wasn't prepared to hear. She said my father had known her mother years ago. At first, I didn't believe her. But then she started telling me things she couldn't have known otherwise. Details about my father's past, places he had been, stories he had told only once and never repeated. The more she spoke, the harder it became to deny it. She wasn't making things up. She knew. And that was when she explained the key. She said her mother had left something behind, something meant for me. The key, she said, belonged to a hidden drawer in my father's desk, something I hadn't discovered. I took the key, even though part of me didn't want to. Taking it meant accepting that everything was real. I left her apartment without saying much else. She didn't stop me or try to explain further. That night, I couldn't sleep. The key sat on the table, pulling my attention back to it every few minutes. By early morning, I knew I wasn't going to be able to ignore it. I walked to my father's study. I stood outside the door for a long time before finally unlocking it. The room looked exactly the same as I had left it. It felt like stepping into a moment that had been paused. I walked to his desk and started checking the drawers. At first, I found nothing unusual. But then I noticed something slightly off, a panel that didn't quite align. When I pressed it, it shifted just enough to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside was a locked drawer. My hands shook as I used the key. When it opened, I found stacks of letters, carefully kept. On top of them was an envelope with my name written in my father's handwriting. I sat down before opening it. because I already knew whatever was inside was going to change something. The letter explained more than I expected. Years ago, my father had helped a woman, my neighbor's mother, not as part of some secret life, but as something he felt responsible for. They stayed in contact over the years. He never told me because he didn't think it mattered anymore. But before he died, he realized some things don't stay buried. He left the letters, the key, and the truth behind, knowing that one day I might need to understand. When I finished reading, everything from the night before started to make sense. The broken sink hadn't been real. It was just a reason. A way to get me inside. To start a conversation I would have never agreed to otherwise. She hadn't been asking for help. She had been delivering something. And the part that stayed with me the most wasn't the truth about my father or the letters I found. It was the realization that she had known exactly what to say to get me to open that door. She didn't force anything. She didn't lie in a way that felt obvious. She simply created a moment I wouldn't question. Even now, when I think about that night, it doesn't feel like something random. It feels planned, not in a dangerous way, but in a precise one. Like everything had been waiting for the right moment to come together. And the strangest part is, deep down, I think some part of me knew the second I heard those 3 slow knocks. I just chose not to listen.